Hello, third grade, and welcome to Unit 3, Week 4. We're going to begin with our vocabulary words as usual. Your first word is model. A model is a small copy of something such as a machine or a building that can often be put together from parts. So think of like a model car, like those little matchbox cars that a lot of you guys played with when you were younger. Those are model cars, right? Or the little scale models of something, where it's a copy of the big version, but it's small enough where you can pick it up and move it around. Your next word is the word effective. Something that is effective means it works the way it was supposed to work. It's doing its job. So their example sentence is gecko tape is effective at holding up heavy things, or think of like duct tape. Something that's effective works properly. Your next word is the word similar. Similar means something that's like something else. They're alike. So you can say that their example sentence says the robot's legs are similar to the legs of a grasshopper. Or I can say that my sister's eyes are a similar color to mine, which means they're kind of the same. They're close, almost alike, or they're alike, they're almost the same as each other. Your next word is the word example. An example is a thing that's copied or followed. So if I do an example on the board of how to write a cursive letter A, that's a model for you to copy on your papers. Your next word is the word identical. Identical means things that are exactly the same, right? So you can have identical twins, right? There are siblings that look exactly the same. You can buy two identical shirts, like matching ones, right? The ones that they look exactly the same or exactly equal. Your next word is the word material. Material is something that's used to make something else, or it's used to do something. So our art materials that we would use in class are like the construction paper and scissors and crayons and things. You can have the materials that you use to build something if you're trying to build something. You might have cardboard and tape and sticks and things to build that structure. Your next word is the word imitate. Now, when you imitate something, you're copying it. Think of like when you mimic something, right? When you imitate, you're copying something, or you're trying to do something the exact same way that someone else is doing it. So sometimes when people whistle, they can imitate the sound of a bird. And your last word for this week is the word observe. When you're looking at something very carefully, you're observing that thing. So you can say, we observed the eagle building its nest up in the tall tree. I observed my friend carefully putting together a card castle. When you're observing, you're looking at something very, very carefully. Now, your spelling words for this week are focused on the prefixes pre, dis, and miss. So your words this week are misprint, misread, mistrust, misspell, mistreat, pre-cut, preview, prepaid, pre-plan, preheat, distrust, discount, dishonest, discover, disable, stairs, rear, where, prejudge, and disconnect. Now let's get into your ELA and grammar notes for the week. Now our ELA and grammar notes this week, we're going to focus first on future tense verbs. So we've talked about past and we've talked about present tense. Now we're going to talk about future tense verbs. So when we talk about a verb tense, remember, we're talking about when that thing is happening. So future tense verbs tell us about something that will happen in the future or something that's going to happen later. We're planning for it to happen, but it's something that has not happened yet. So think about if you're talking about your plans for next week, or maybe you're talking about what you're going to do tomorrow, or what you're going to have for breakfast on, next Sunday. These are all things that are going to be in the future. Now, the future tense verb is used for both singular and plural subjects. So before, when we had past tense verbs, you would have to change it depending on if your subject was singular or plural, like she had or they have. Or sorry, for present tense, she has or they have, he has or they have, I have or you have. Now I did put the rule in here for you, and I made it a little bit smaller, a different color, just to kind of remind you what those rules are, and you can review those on your own. Those are talking about present tense verbs that end with s or es, and how we will remove that, and we're going to add the word will before the verb to make it a future tense verb. So instead of saying she walks to the park, if I want to make it into a future tense, I'll say she will walk to the park. So I took the s off of the word walks, and I left it at just the base word walk, and I added the word will before it. Akram rides his bike, or Akram will ride his bike. So rides with an S, that S is removed. We add the word will before it, and it becomes will ride. Now we don't add an S or ES for plural subjects after I or you. Remember, we treat those the same way as we treat plural subjects, and I or you, we treat those all the same. So they walk at the park, they will walk at the park. Notice how there was no S on it before when we're talking about present tense. There's still no S on it when we're talking about future tense. The only difference is we added the word will. Now, future tense verbs, I gave you the base word and how we changed it into future form and when we use it in a sentence. So help becomes will help. Tomorrow we will help our friends build a sandcastle. Find becomes will find. I will find the bedtime book after dinner. Show becomes will show. She will show her classmates her new drawing. And work will become will work. Our group will work together on a project. So these are just some example sentences of how to use the future tense of a verb. We just add the word will before that verb. Now we're also going to talk about these prefixes that you saw in your spelling words, pre, miss, and dis. Now remember, a prefix, we talked about prefixes and suffixes. Both of those are word parts that are added onto a word, and they come from the word affix. So when you affix something, you're sticking it on to something else, right? You're affixing it on. So a prefix is attached or stuck onto the beginning of a word. And like we learned before, suffixes are so. The word pre means before. So if you preheat the oven, right, you're heating it up before you put your cookies into the oven. If you preview a movie, you're watching it before, you're watching something before the actual movie, like the previews. If you've ever gone to a movie theater, those are kind of those short clips that tell you about other movies that are coming out. Or if you pre-wash something, you're washing it before you use it. Now the prefix miss means something that's wrong. Like if you misspell a word, you spelled it wrong. If you misunderstand something, you understood it the wrong way. Or if you misplace something, you put it in the wrong spot and now you're having a hard time finding it. And your last prefix is the prefix dis, D-I-S. This means the opposite of or not. So if you have the word dislike, it's the opposite of liking, or you do not like something. Disappear is the opposite of appearing, or something that does not appear anymore. You can't see it. Disbelief is the opposite of believing something, or it's the state of not believing something. Now, the next part of our notes are going to focus on the final E syllables. So final E syllables, also called VCE syllables. So VCE syllables are called final E syllables because they're made up of a V, a C, and a silent E. So a vowel, a consonant, and then a silent E. And all of those are found in the very last syllable of the word. Now these also have a long vowel sound in them because we know that a silent E makes the vowel that came before it say its name. So it makes it a long vowel sound. I'm going to give you some examples of words that have that VCE combination in their final syllables, and I'm going to show you how we split them up. So the first one is the word excuse. Now, if I have the word excuse, I split it EX, and then that's my first syllable, and CUSE is my second syllable. So that USE that I have underlined here, that's a vowel, a consonant, and a silent E. You're hearing excuse. You're hearing the U sound. You're hearing the letter U say its name. Reptile, again, divide that syllable. I have the ILE, that's my VCE or my final E in the syllable. Invite, VITE, vowel, consonant, silent E. Describe, police, oppose, All of these, you're hearing the vowel say its name. So you're hearing that long vowel sound in that final syllable because of that silent E that's in the end of it. So as you go through your workbooks, take a look and pay attention to where you find these. Make sure you're splitting them in the correct spot and find that VCE combination. Now, the last two things we're going to talk about are going to be root words, and then we're going to talk about capitalization and underlining. Now, root words are the simplest form of a word without any added prefixes or suffixes. So we've talked about prefixes just a little bit up. We've talked about suffixes in the past. Your root word is what you would have attached those prefixes and suffixes onto. So it's the very simple form of the word. So if you have the word happily, the word happily comes from the word happy. That is the smallest, simplest form of that word. If you have the word untie, it comes from the word tie, right? We're going to take that prefix un off of it and just have the smallest form of that word. If I tell you something is relatable, it comes from the word relate. So I take off that suffix able and it takes it back down to its simplest form. Or if I say something is unbreakable, unbreakable has a prefix and a suffix attached to it. So we have the un, that's the prefix, and the able, the able, is the suffix. So when we take that and decompose it down to its very basic part, the root word in there is the word break. So something that is unbreakable means it cannot be broken. But the root word is the word break. So remember, the root word is the smallest and simplest form of the word when you take off all of the extras. You take off the ed, take off the ing, you take off the s or es, you take off all the prefixes and suffixes, and what you're left with is that simplest form of the word. All right, now the last thing that we're going to talk about is titles of books and magazines. So for titles of books and magazines, and remember, these things are long pieces of writing. They're not short. So an entire book or an entire magazine, we underline the title of that book or that magazine, and we capitalize the first word and every other important word in the title. So I gave you guys a few examples here. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So we see Harry Potter is a name, right? So that's going to be capitalized. That's a proper noun. The words and the word the are not important words, and they're not the first words in the title, so those don't get capitalized. Highlights magazine. Highlights is the name of the magazine. So again, capital letter. And since it's just one word, that whole word is underlined. Now we have the next one is the book, The Mouse and the Motorcycle. Now remember, I told you the word the doesn't get capitalized unless it's the first word of the title. No matter what the first word of the title is, whether it's an important word, something we consider an important word, or an unimportant word, because it's the first word, it will always be capitalized. Now you see the word the in this title twice, the mouse and the motorcycle. So the first the is capitalized only because it's the first word. But the second time we see it, since it's not considered an important word, we do not capitalize it. And I gave you guys a few more examples as you go down that you can read through. Now, if you want to know which words we do not capitalize in a title, of course, unless they're the first word, I listed them below. So we have the words a, an, and the. These are called articles. So we're going to learn more about these later, but it's something to keep in the back of your head. So the things that we don't capitalize are articles, coordinating conjunctions, and prepositions. And I gave you examples of all of these. So a, an, and the, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. These are the fanboys. We've talked about this in the past. Again, only capitalized if they're the first word in the title. Otherwise, they're lowercase. And then prepositions, at, around, by, after, along, for, from, of, on, to, with, or without. Those are prepositions. We don't capitalize those either. All right, so let's go ahead and get into your reading for this week. Now we're at Unit 3, Week 4, and we're going to be reading an expository text called Big Ideas from Nature. Now remember, we talked about this before. Expository texts are texts or pieces of writing that teach us something. So we're learning something from it. It's not a fictional story. It's not telling us something that's funny or something that's just entertaining. It's giving us information and facts.
Genre, expository text. Big Ideas from Nature by Adrian Mason. Essential question. What ideas can we get from nature? Read how ideas from nature inspired new inventions. Sometimes a sticky situation can lead to a great invention. In the 1940s, George de Mestral went for a walk with his dog. Along the way, George's pants and his dog's fur caught tiny seeds called burrs. George was curious. Why did the burrs stick so well? He looked closer. The burrs were covered in tiny hooks. George used this idea to invent a two-sided fastener. It had hooks on one side and loops on the other. Today, these hook and loop fasteners are used on everything from shoes to spaceships. Those sticky burrs gave de Mestral a great idea. Nature provided a model that George could imitate. Copying or imitating designs from nature is called biomimicry. Bio-mim-icry. Bio means life, and mimicry means to copy. From owls' sharp claws to elephants' bendy noses, nature is full of models. We can learn from each one. Inspiration, idea, hooks, fasteners. Observing how burrs stick to cloth and fur inspired one inventor to create a new fastener. Observing nature gives us ideas for new things. George de Mestral didn't set out on his walk thinking he would create a new fastener, but by being curious and observant, he did just that. Nature did it first. Designers often start with a problem. They may look for solutions in the natural world. Nature has been making and testing designs for a long time. Nature often has the answers to questions people ask. More than 100 years ago, the Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur, wondered how to fly. For an answer, they watched birds, the flying experts. Watching bird wings gave them ideas on how to design airplane wings. While bird wings are not identical to plane wings, they both can fly. The Wright brothers built an airplane in 1903. It was the first to lift up, up, and away. Inspiration, idea. Leonardo da Vinci was an artist and inventor. He lived more than 400 years ago. He looked at birds' wings and then drew plans for many flying machines. Smart shapes. Fish and cars share a problem. It takes energy to move a fish through water and a car through air. Fish get energy from food. Cars get it from fuel. To create a new fuel-saving car, designers studied the shape of fish. They found that the boxfish's square shape was streamlined. This means that the fish slips through the water without wasting energy. By making the new car's shape similar to that of the boxfish, they created a car that saves gas. The car's frame is also similar to the fish's skeleton. The metal frame is thick in some places and thinner in others, just like the fish's bones. This saves on materials and puts strength where it is needed most. Inspiration, idea. Watching fish gave car designers a new idea for a car's shape. Energy savers. Air conditioners keep buildings cool. The shape of a building can also help. In Africa, termites gave builders an example of a self-cooling structure. Holes at the bottom of termite mounds catch the wind. The air rises through tunnels and flows out the top. The termites designed an effective way to cool a structure. The builders borrowed their ideas. During the day, fans on the first floor blow cool air into the building. The air rises and flows through chimneys on the roof. This design saves money and energy. Inspiration. Idea. How is a termite mound like this building in Africa? They both need a way to stay cool. Master movers. You can't travel to Mars, but a robot can. Robots can explore places that are not safe for people. Robots can't walk, but they still have to travel over dips and bumps. Sometimes they get stuck. Designers are working on a robot called JAWBot to fix the problem. The name JAWBot comes from the words jump and roll. The JAWBot can do both. The super spring of grasshopper legs gave designers their idea. Inspiration. Idea. Grasshoppers and the robot JAWBot can both jump. Tunnel makers. More than 200 years ago, an engineer was trying to drill a tunnel under a river, but each attempt failed. The walls kept falling in. Then he saw how shipworms bored through wood. The animal uses a tough shield to drill. Then it builds a hard tube along the tunnel walls. What a great idea! The engineer copied the shipworm to build the Thames Tunnel. As he drilled, workers lined the tunnel walls with bricks. Inspiration. Idea. Shipworm. Shipworm's tunnel. Shipworms and tunnel builders need a way to drill through wood or rock safely. Mixing new materials. Tiny hairs on a gecko's foot help it climb walls. It can cling to ceilings too. Scientists studied gecko feet to create a bandage with bumps. The bandage is so sticky, it can even attach wet surfaces, like a human heart. Inspiration. Idea. Sticky gecko feet gave doctors an idea for a super sticky bandage. Stop and check. Summarize. What did you learn from reading the section called Mixing New Materials? Tell what the section is about. Working together. Birds fly in flocks. Fish swim in schools. They do this without hitting one another. Cars move in large groups too, but they often crash. Today, car designers are learning from locusts. They study how the insects travel together safely. One day you might drive a car that sees the cars around it. Inspiration. Idea. Ideas from locusts are helping to design safer cars. Caption. Learning from the experts. Biomimicry shows that ideas that work for nature can work for people too. It makes sense. Need a material that is strong and stretchy? Learning about spider silk would be a good place to begin. Spider silk is one of the strongest fibers in nature. It is as flexible as an elastic band and strong like steel. Need a type of glue that will harden in salt water? What do the sea creatures, barnacles, and mussels use to stick on rocks? Maybe nature already has a plan or a recipe people can use. Observing how nature works also shows us ways to help the planet. Nature does not waste materials or energy, and natural designs do not pollute the air or water. Learning new things while protecting Earth's resources. That's an idea worth copying. Inspiration. Idea. This cloth was woven from the silk that spiders use to spin webs. Perdix invents the saw. In the days of gods and goddesses, there lived an inventor named Daedalus. Dead-less. He was famous throughout Greece for his good ideas and his bad temper. One day Daedalus heard a knock on his workshop door. "Who's interrupting my work?" he growled. "It's me, uncle," said his 12-year-old nephew Perdix. Per-dix. "I want to be a great inventor, too. Will you teach me?" Daedalus's back hurt from chopping firewood. His shoulder ached from sweeping. He didn't really want to teach Perdix. Then he got an idea. "If you do all the chores, I'll let you watch me invent things," he said. Perdix did the chores, cooked meals, and observed how Daedalus worked. The boy had some clever ideas. He wanted to make a smaller axe for cutting branches for firewood. Daedalus disagreed. "Just leave the inventing to me," he always hissed. One afternoon, Perdix roasted a large fish for lunch. After eating, Daedalus licked his fingers and smacked his lips. "That was pretty good, Perdix, but I've eaten better," he said. Perdix sighed and started washing the dishes. In the process, he cut his finger on the jagged backbone of the fish. He held the backbone up and studied its sharp edges. "I can imitate this design and make a fine tool for cutting wood," he thought. The next day, Perdix sawed all the firewood before Daedalus awoke. "How did you finish your work so early?" Daedalus snarled. "It was easy with my new invention," said Perdix. He showed his uncle the saw. Daedalus was reluctant to praise his clever nephew. "It should be my invention because you cooked that fish for me," he sniffed. Perdix just smiled. He now realized that he was a great inventor too.
All right, that takes us to the end of the stories in our literature anthology book. We're going to get started on the story in our reading and writing workshop book. And now this one is called Bats Did It First.
Genre: expository. Bats did it first. Nature is full of great ideas. Many inventors and scientists just step outside and look around for inspiration and ideas. They often imitate or copy what they see outdoors. They use nature to inspire their inventions. One amazing invention was inspired by bats. It's a special cane that helps blind people navigate and get around. This boy is blind and uses a special cane to help him get around. Canes lead the way. Many blind people use canes. They tap the canes on the ground in front of them to locate objects that may be in the way. This helps them move around safely as they do their shopping or walk outdoors. The bat-inspired cane is different from these canes. It sends out sound waves, or signals. These signals are almost identical to the ones bats use to find their way in the dark. How bats get around. The scientist that came up with the idea for the new cane was inspired by watching bats. He observed the way bats fly at night. The bats make high-pitched sounds that people cannot hear. These sounds create an amazing navigation system for the bats. Here's how it works. Bats send sound waves out through their mouth or nose. These sound waves hit objects and then bounce back as an echo. The echo tells the bats how far away an object is and how big it is. This information helps bats find bugs to eat. It is also an effective way to keep bats from bumping into trees and other bats. How bats use sound waves. Bat. sound wave, echo, moth. This diagram shows how a bat uses sound waves. First, the bat sends out sound waves. Then the waves hit the moth and bounce back to the bat as an echo. This tells the bat where and how close the moth is. A batty idea. The scientist who invented the new cane took what he learned from observing bats. He used a similar idea. He started with an ordinary white cane. He wanted the cane to imitate the way bats use sound waves. So he sketched plans and made a model of his invention. When he built the cane, the scientist used a special material that was lightweight and strong. Then he added sound waves. Finally, a team of scientists tested the cane. It worked. How the cane works. The handle of the cane sends out signals. The signals bounce off objects in front of the cane. Then an echo bounces back to the cane's handle. The person holding it feels buttons on the handle vibrate or shake. These buttons tell the person how far away and how big the object is. The bat-inspired cane. Sound wave, cane, echo, mailbox. This bat-inspired cane uses sound waves. The cane alerts the man there is something in his way. Scientists and inventors study plants and animals all the time. Their observations have led them to invent many useful things. And like many new inventions, the bat-inspired cane is a good example of how great ideas can come from nature. This scientist is studying how bats fly.
All right, let's get into our comprehension strategy and skill for this week. Now we're going to be talking about summarizing. Now when we summarize, we're basically just retelling the important parts of what we read. So think of when you're telling your friend about a story that you read. You're not telling them every single word of it. You're telling them the most important parts. So that's going to be our strategy for this week.
Summarize. When you summarize, you tell the most important ideas and details in a text. Use important details to help you summarize. Bats did it first. Find text evidence. How did one scientist come up with the idea for the new cane? Identify important ideas and details and summarize them in your own words. How bats get around. The scientist that came up with the idea for the new cane was inspired by watching bats. He observed the way bats fly at night. The bats make high-pitched sounds that people cannot hear. These sounds create an amazing navigation system for the bats. Here's how it works. I read that one scientist came up with an idea for a new cane. He watched bats use sound waves to navigate at night. Those details help me summarize. The way bats use sound waves led to the invention of a new cane. Main idea and key details. The main idea is the most important point the author makes about a topic. Key details tell about the main idea. Put the details together to figure out the main idea. Find text evidence. What details tell about how bats fly at night? I can reread page 233 and find important details. Then I can use them to figure out the main idea. Graphic organizer. Detail. Bats make high-pitched sounds through their mouth and nose. Detail. These sound waves hit objects and bounce back as an echo. Expository text. Bats did it first is an expository text. Expository text gives facts and information about a topic. Includes text features such as photographs, captions, and a diagram. Find text evidence. I can tell that bats did it first is an expository text. It has photographs with captions. It also has a diagram that shows how bats fly at night. Text features. Diagram. A diagram is a picture that gives more information about the text. Labels name the parts of the diagram. Caption. A caption tells about a photograph or diagram. Root words. A root word is the simplest form of a word. It helps you figure out the meaning of a related word. Find text evidence. In Bats Did It First, I see the word invention. I think the root word of invention is invent. I know invent means to make something new. An invention is something new that is made. One amazing invention was inspired by bats.
All right, that takes us to the end of our notes for this week. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, third grade. Bye-bye.